back, everybody. Happy Sunday. It is August 19th, 2018, 3:49 p.m. Before I go any further, I apologize very much for the audio situations lately. I've been having to use a mic that I'm not used to using. I have to adjust it in my editing program. Thanks to you guys, though, I have already ordered a new breakaway cord for my headset, so things will be back to normal in the next couple days, probably early to mid next week. So if you guys can just bear with me, that would be great. I suggest using headphones and turning the settings on the video to high def. They usually start around 460. You want to change that to at least 720 HD. Alright, with that said, you are looking at current temperatures in the U.S. The reason I'm showing this, we're not really going to be talking about the U.S. too much in this video because we have some pretty crazy situations going on, but just to show you a little bit of a drastic temperature change, Southern California has already broken the 100-degree mark for the day, and then when you move up to Northern California off the coast, we're in the 50s, so just very interesting to see those temperature changes of sometimes 50-degree differentials within one state. So also with that said, a lot of significant weather has been going on in the U.S., and again, I will make that a separate video. But the talk of the town, as we all know, 8.2 quake strikes the Pacific, no damage reported in Fiji, and no deaths reported. So that is a great thing, and the reason for that is because of how deep this quake was. This quake was 347 miles deep, guys. Try to put that into your mind as far as like traveling to another state. And that's how deep into the earth this earthquake was registered. Had this thing been any more shallow, the entire island of Fiji would be basically in shambles right now. So there is a downside to this, though. Fiji has been receiving a lot of earthquakes that are very, very deep. For example, just today alone, we had our 8.2 earthquake at 8:19 p.m. last night. That was the 18th. Now, we also had that followed by a 6.3 quake at 8:23 p.m. That was not short after. That was also very deep, 348 miles deep. And then later on in the day, 12 a.m. into the 19th, we had a 6.8, which actually registered as a 7.0. So your guess is as good as mine as to why they do that. But the point of it being is that that one was 260 plus miles deep. So with that said, a lot of studies show that when you get a lot of deep earthquakes in a single area, you can almost expect a larger, shallower earthquake within that vicinity. So if that holds true, the Fiji area needs to be on major alert for stuff like this, because if we're talking an 8.2, almost 350 miles deep, who knows what that would do to a more shallow surface area that's already been disrupted by a lot of quakes. So that's not it. We are also talking about Indonesia, which actually, as of 10:56 a.m. today, had a 7.0 earthquake, and that is not the first one we've had this month. August 5th, 5 people were killed, 460 people injured in another 7.0 quake, and not to mention, this is right off the side of a volcano, an active volcano called Mount Rinjani. It is a volcano, it is active, but seeing these strength of earthquakes next to this island are they make you nervous. Let's just say that to lowball it, if you want to say. So I'm trying to zoom in here a little bit to give you an idea of how close these quakes have been to this volcano here. If this thing wants to load on me, doesn't seem to want to for whatever reason. Okay, there we go. So here is our volcano. Obviously, this is the blue highlighted one, which matches the 6.9, which was actually a 7.1 to a 7.0. It was then lowered, and then look at all the aftershocks. It seems that they are moving to the east as far as the aftershocks go, but the fact that these are at the base of a volcano, very concerning to me. Again, I suggest you check with the earthquake channels that really spend all their time on earthquakes. They will give you much more accurate information, but the information we have here is, as far as I know, correct, besides the downsizing of some of these. So even this 8.2 could have been a lot higher. I actually caught this late after I had woken up today. which is why you're hearing from me now rather than when it first happened. So this actually set off buoys. You could see here the 8.2 clearly in Fiji set that buoy off. That will be going off for another 24 hours. And then earlier this morning, Indonesia, near that volcano rather, that buoy has been set off as well. So even though the 8.2 was 300 something miles deep, it still set this buoy off. And these buoys are on the surface of the ocean. So not only do you have the surface of the ocean depth to cover, you also have that 300 plus miles deep into the crust of the earth as well. It just goes to show how sensitive these sensors are and what they read. So, and we also have Hurricane Lane, which we'll be getting into actually right about now, which more likely than not will dip underneath the big island of Hawaii. The GFS model still has this hurricane actually hitting the big island, but most models, including the European model, have it going just south. It will cause rough surf, just like we saw with that previous hurricane that made it basically as a tropical storm all the way to the other side of the ocean, almost into typhoon territory, which they actually they registered on their typhoon scale. So that's a rare situation to see a hurricane go from the Caribbean part of the Pacific on the other side, obviously making it all the way across the Pacific Ocean into the area where we call hurricanes typhoons, and so on and so forth. So with that said, on to our hurricanes. Obviously we see current storms, Hurricane Lane. Right now Hurricane Lane is basically teeter-tottering between that Category 4, Category 5 status. Now, this thing may very well hit Category 5. We got to wait and see. We also are going to be talking about Typhoon Solek. Yes, that is called Solek. And this is a very big typhoon, a very strong typhoon. It will cause a lot of damage. There's no doubt about it. It has nowhere else to go but basically where these models are showing. And then unfortunately for the areas of Japan and then South Korea, we have Typhoon Cimarron. Now this name has been used before as a typhoon, but it was actually a tropical storm. It was only named, so they reused this name. If this typhoon stays the way it is now, this may be a retired name because this is a big boy. Now, before I get on to the typhoons, let's just take a look at the path that we are expected to see Hurricane Lane take that came from the Pacific Ocean that is currently threatening Hawaii. Now, I got you here on Ventu Sky. Again, this is the GFS version, so this may have this storm go into the Big Island unless they have updated it, which it looks like, oh, maybe not. There's a big turn there by Thursday. Okay, so by Thursday they have this thing directly under the southern tip of the Big Island. By the 24th, it looks like it gets actually destroyed by the island due to landfall. Now, that is not a guarantee. I'm not trying to tell people that this thing is going to smash into the Big Island because, honestly, I don't think it will. I'm trusting the European models as far as this storm goes, and I will show you why. We're going to run through first the Tropical Tidbits version of where this storm's going to go. 959 pressure, very low pressure, very strong storm, very healthy storm. You can see it does teeter in the 70s as you get closer to the island, but the GFS model has it almost stopping dead in its tracks and then hitting the Big Island and then dissipating into basically nothing. Now, when I switch that to the European model and we back up to current time, which is the 19th, and we can watch it here. Excuse me. The pressure is higher. It shows it as a weaker storm. So different charts can show different data, guys. It's the way it is. Sometimes you got to find a median in there. But the point of this is that the European model shows this thing clearly going underneath the Big Island and then making that northern hook. It all depends on the pressures going on above it. The high pressure in the Pacific Ocean is just like the high pressure we deal with in the Bermuda Atlantic, in the Atlantic Ocean, which controls our hurricanes as far as the U.S. goes. So there's the difference between the GFS and the European model. European has been more accurate this year, so I will more than likely be using that as our main reference. I don't like making predictions of where I think it's going to go, but this one I honestly believe it's going to stay underneath the Big Island, causing storm surge, stuff like that, but most of it will be in areas that are already evacuated due to the continuing Kilauea volcano eruptions. So with that said, let's take a look at this crazy typhoon Solek. Very strong shape, no sign of dry air being pulled into it. I know this is a little skippy. If I take these two frames out here, we can get a better look at it. But we got a clear eye there. It is beginning to get, the bands are hitting outer islands in the area. And I want to show you what this looks like on Ventus sky. Now this is like crazy to me. This is just wild, wild stuff. You can see here our GFS is showing a 926 pressure. I took a snapshot yesterday, which I don't have pulled up now. This thing dropped below 800 millibars in pressure, which is very, very strong. In fact, the strongest typhoon in recorded history was Typhoon Tip. Now, Typhoon Tip not only broke records as far as the size as far as diameter, but we're talking 190 mile an hour winds. We had 10-minute sustained winds of 160 miles per hour. That is unbelievable. You can see here Category 5 based on the Saffir-Simpson scale. But what I want to show you here, I know this is going back in history. Look at this picture. If you compared the size of Typhoon Tip back in the day when this happened, this was the size of it. This is how much of the U.S. that this storm would have covered had it been a U.S. storm. When I saw this, I thought this was fake. This is an unbelievably sized storm. It actually says 1,130 kilometers from one end to the other, which is just, it's almost unheard of. And they have a little tropical cyclone Tracy here, which was also a pretty significant storm. That was the size of it. This was the size of Typhoon Tip. So to give you an idea, typhoons are no joke. They can get very big, and I want to show you this right now. So we are on the 20th, which is tomorrow. We'll back up to the 19th and just watch the path of this thing. This is Solek, and this right behind it is Cimarron. So you're going to see this is going to be like a double whammy. This thing's going to come right underneath the southern area of Japan, and then it's going to hook right into South Korea, also clearly affecting North Korea as well. And then you will see Cimarron come right behind it. Very, very wild situation. This is not going to be good for a while for this area, but you can tell that this thing is going to stay strong because it's going to cut through these islands and the mainlands, part of the mainlands of Japan. Now, it can get stronger in between this area before it hits South Korea, which it looks like it actually does. Right now, we would be easily Category 5 status for this typhoon. So we move forward into the 21st, which is 2 days from now. So you can pretty much guarantee this is the path this thing will take. Regardless, this entire area here, you could do a big giant circle. They will feel the effects of this typhoon. This is one of the bigger typhoons I've seen this season. One of the bigger that you will probably see this season. The lowest pressure I see is 906 right now. Clearly Category 5. And then here is Cimarron right below at 931, already in Category 4 status. But this is what we're looking up to as far as these typhoons go. They are going to decimate parts of Japan, parts of South Korea, and all the islands in between. So even though they don't do a lot of foreign news about Japan and South Korea and stuff like that in the news, unless it's politics, these two typhoons will more than likely go down in history as some of the stronger storms to ever hit this area. So it was definitely worth showing you guys. Sorry, I got a freaking bug on my laptop screen. Really annoying. But so yes, I wanted to bring that to you. Sorry we jumped around a little bit. I wanted to cover a few topics in this, but yeah, guys, we have a lot of earthquakes going on. And if you remember, last week we did a video. This was a 1 week period with 6.0 earthquakes and above, and we basically found this pattern that it was just kind of circling the Pacific Ocean, almost circling the Ring of Fire. So this was last week. You could see parts of Indonesia were still dealing with strong quakes at the time, but I also took some snapshots of the current situation that we're dealing with. Here's that 6.9 in Indonesia. There's actually another one there too. Two very significant earthquakes there that caused damage. These were much shallower, much more shallow than the earthquakes that we had in Fiji. Again, the 6.8, the 8.2, and I know I have a zoom in of this somewhere here. Here we go. All right, so here's the 8.2 information, 350 miles deep. This 6.3 earthquake near Fiji was 348 miles deep, and then the 6.8 you see above that white box there, 262 miles deep. So when you get three major, including one mega earthquake that are all hundreds of miles deep, all you can do is wonder if that theory stays true, that deep earthquakes cause stronger, shallower quakes. And if that's the case, then this entire area of the Pacific Ocean, not just Fiji itself, but moving to the west, to the east, to the north, to the south, there could be some major, major earthquakes on their way. And it's just been the talk of the town, basically, with all the volcanoes going off, the earthquakes going off, the very active Pacific season, and we are very much in the heart of the Atlantic hurricane season, which has been disrupted by sandstorms, but we're beginning to see these storms connect, and we're beginning to see a lot of collection of the storms, and that's where you get your tropical depressions, and that is when you begin to get your Category 1 hurricanes. And once they become hurricanes, they enter an area that I currently don't have pulled up, so I'm sorry about that. Maybe I do have it pulled up. Let's just look on Ventu Sky, and I'll give you an idea of what I'm talking about here. Basically, if you're looking at the U.S. from here, we have a high pressure in the Atlantic Ocean, which is always there, no matter what. So that's why our storms come down this way. They are pressed south along this warm water belt, and then the pressure from the Atlantic Ocean lets loose, and then it's the jet stream that determines the rest of the path of the hurricane. Because once pressure is let off hurricanes, they just naturally want to go north in the northern hemisphere. So we got to keep an eye out for that. There are storms collecting currently right now coming off the west side of Africa. We'll see how much the sand affects those. As I told you before, the sand has calmed down a little bit. But as of today, some of that sand is starting to follow that path again. So we'll see if some of these invests or if any future storms in the next couple of weeks form out of nowhere. And again, we can have storms form right down here in the Caribbean, then to South Korea and North Korea. It will be fixed very soon, next couple days. And again, thanks to you guys, that is possible. I appreciate the support. We both appreciate the support, Carolyn and I. And that's about it, guys. Thank you very much. We will talk later on this afternoon. Have a good night. Bye-bye.